try just rebooting my computer, and what do you know, it worked.
You're actually right on time. Yeah. Just easier for everybody working from home, or would everybody rather be spend their nights at the office?
Loaded question.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. We'll have to make that see how that works in the future. Well, I've got 7 o'clock. Our corporate officer, are you with us?
Hi.
Hey, hi. Okay. So we'll, being 7 o'clock, we'll open the meeting. This is the regular council meeting of June 2, 2020. I'd like to welcome everybody here, everybody who I see and those who I can't see. Welcome. Councillor Lumley is busy tonight. I know he's getting his restaurant ready for opening on Thursday, and I have a reservation on Saturday night, so I got in there before you did. So uh, acknowledge that we are meeting this evening in the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation, and call the meeting to order, the time being 7:01 on my clock, and request a resolution to approve the agenda. Move by Councillor Kroll, Councillor D'Andrade, all in favor? Thank you. The agenda is approved. Um, and before we proceed, I just have a couple of other items I'd like to bring forward to council's attention. And there's no real provision on the agenda to do this, so I'd like to just do it anyway. And these are a couple of recognitions of passing or remembrance in our community. The first one is Barry Custance. I don't know how many of you knew Barry. Barry was a long-standing volunteer and elder in our community. He passed away this past May 17th. And I'll just read a note from his obituary. It says that Pa was always community minded, volunteering in every town he lived in. Most recently, he was a Seashell Lion, volunteered at the April Fool's Run, coached Little League Baseball, was president of the Sunshine Coast Equestrian Club, volunteer and chairman of Sea Cavalcade for many years, and instrumental in bringing the Fraser Blues Air Show. So Barry was, I knew Barry very well in his role with Sea Cavalcade, and he'll be sadly missed as a community member and community volunteer. And I just wanted to recognize that tonight. And the other gentleman, maybe a little less known to some of you, and that is Norm Bashor, Bashor. Now, Norm was the owner of Trident Leather. And you may recall Trident Leather. It was down on Molly's Lane, and then later on it was up in the industrial park. And Norm was, this is a note from Ed Hill. Norm was the man responsible for the formation of the original Citizens on Patrol here in Gibsons. During my first year when I was sergeant in charge of the Gibsons detachment, summer of 1987, we had several B&Es and a bunch of vandalism in the downtown area. Norm, who was a leathersmith, owned Trident Leather in downtown Gibsons, and he called me. I met with him. He was upset about the break-ins and vandalism, and something had to be done, he said. We talked about the issue and for some time, and finally he came up with what would be a positive, successful, long-term solution. We started a program called Citizens on Patrol. He headed up the first meeting for a time. The new Gibson Citizen Patrol. It was a program that ran successfully for many years. The inaugural meeting in the Gibsons was held in the old Gibsons Pig Rugby House at Armours Beach. And Norm, if you didn't know him, he was a quiet man, did fantastic leather work. Over the years, I bought several belts from him and regularly got my dog leashes repaired after the dog cheered through them. So he will also be very missed in the community. So it's sad, but I think it's also important that we recognize people, unfortunately, all too often in passing, as opposed to while they are present with us. David, you knew Norm.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. Norm was a neighbor of mine when we first purchased our house on North Fletcher in Gibsons, and got to know he and his wife Lois quite well. And then um, they were looking for a new house, and at the time I was doing property management, and they ended up moving into our old house down on the bandland. Um, Sort of a sad side to Norm's passing is some people just wondered why he closed his business. And he actually closed his business because Lois, his wife, who was actually a really creative jeweler in her own right, um, became seriously ill and required care. And she went into one of the long-term care facilities on the coast. And Norm was really quite distressed at the care she was receiving and one thing and another. So he closed his business so he could actually bring her home and look after her. And the sad part of all this is she has survived him and she's had to go back into the care that he fought so hard to keep her out of. So it's a sad story. He was a very talented gentleman. We had a friend living with us, and when he passed, Norman Lois gave us a flowering verbena, and it blooms every year on the anniversary of our friend's passing. And sadly, the plant has taken on yet another new meaning. So, yes, he is a loss to the community.
Something we might want to think about as a council is something that I noticed in the obituary for Norm in the Coast Reporter. It referred to a donation of a tree in his memory. And it's something we might want to think about because we do have trees we want to plant. And I know that that has been done in the past in the community. So for both Norm and Barry, something that very active volunteers, very important in the early development and the continued development of our community. So I don't know that we have a program of recognition for that. I know we have a program if somebody wants to make a donation in memory of somebody, but we might also want to initiate that ourselves. David Kroll, Councillor Kroll.
Something that might be considered, because I think it's a great idea, and I had mentioned something to you along those lines. If if and when the Healing Forest project moves forward, but sort of the pond control behind that's sort of proposed behind the swimming pool as part of the flood control program has a bit of a planting area around it, and it might be an area that could be looked at for planting sort of appropriate trees to the landscape plan, but in memory of people. And it would be a relatively public place where people could appreciate them.
Let's keep that thought in mind and see how we can maybe build on something like that for our community. So. Okay, enough of sad passings. Let's move on to the agenda again, and we'll go to adoption of the minutes. We have the minutes of the special council meeting of May 12, 2020. And somebody like to move adoption? Councillor Kroll, Councillor Ladwig, all in favor of adoption? Okay, thank you. Adopted. The regular council meeting of May 19, 2020. Minutes to be adopted. So move adoption. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Ladwig, all in favor of adoption? Thank you. And if I would stop, business arising from the minutes of either of those agendas. And I will bring forward the fact that at the May 19th regular meeting of council, we had the declaration for Pride Month in Gibsons. For the month of June. And we celebrated that. You recall that Lori Leask was on the Zoom meeting with us and talked with her. The pride flag was raised in Gibsons on Monday, June the 1st. And by that afternoon, it had already been ripped down. And I just want to acknowledge that that does not reflect our community. That was a singular act of vandalism. a person was arrested. We have supported charges against that person because we certainly don't want that to be to go unnoticed. But we're also prepared to work on a restitution with him and not necessarily proceed in a criminal way. So I look forward to that opportunity. But I just want to say that certainly does not reflect this council's view, nor do I believe that it reflects our community view. It's just we will move forward now. The flag has now been moved. It was in Pioneer Park. It's now at the front of the office. You may have noticed it today. So I just want to acknowledge that there was an article in the paper about it today, and I don't know if council has any comment or is aware of that. Councillor Crowell.
I actually happened to be on scene when the perpetrator was, or just shortly after he was arrested. And from discussion with the RCMP, it wasn't a sort of homophobic, anti-gay gesture. The person was under the influence, and he was upset that it wasn't a Canadian flag there. And the misconception people have is that the principal flag for the town of Gibsons is at the town hall. The Pioneer Square flagpole is a secondary flagpole, and people don't always appreciate the significance of what is flying on that pole in the lower village. So it's anyway, the flag is back up. The damaged flag has been repaired, and we have a backup now, so it's all good. But you know, I agree with you that people do need to be aware that vandalism, regardless of motive, is not acceptable. And even
Councillor Ladwig first.
Sorry, Councillor Cole, I didn't mean to cut you off if I did. I just wanted to thank you for raising that comment, because I've actually heard that now from a couple of people in town. It's not an anti-homophobic issue, but they have taken issue with the Canadian flag coming down to raise other flags for other issues. So it did kind of make, I wondered about that, whether that's what was going on, and I'm sort of glad to hear it is, not that it was the right thing for that individual to do. But I was just wondering if it'd be possible, would it be possible to raise a flag underneath the Canadian flag while keeping the Canadian flag up? Is there other options? I was wondering that we could support.
Yeah, I talked with our CAO about that today. Our flag standards do not have room for two flags on them, but we're going to change that. If you notice, the schools have the two flags, the Canadian flag flying above the pride flag at this time, so that we will come into compliance with that as well. Councillor D'Andrade?
I just want to acknowledge your response. I think it was really good, your willingness to work with the person. And I think we are in a big moment in not only in Gibson, but in our planet. I mean, the states, what we saw, this racism and all these movements. And I think even though some of them bring violence, but I think, having the attitude of say, okay, let's bring this member back and let's have a nice conversation. I think this is incredible, because we will only fight racism or prejudice or anything with good manners, let's say. So I really appreciate, and any effort in this regard, I'm willing to support.
Yeah. Other comments before we move on? Yeah. Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to, at this point in time, we're into inquiries, and the inquiries at this stage of our meeting are inquiries for any items that is on the agenda. So I'll turn it over to our corporate officer.
At this time, I'll ask anybody who's attending the meeting as an attendee to use the raise the hand feature that's at the bottom of the screen, and I can turn on your video and your sound. I'm not seeing any, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. And just for the benefit of the gallery, I'm not quite as competent as my associates that I don't know who's there. I understand there's a list there that I could look at, but I haven't found that list yet. So I do know you're there, and please feel free to participate in the meeting at the appropriate time. We'll go on next to committee reports, and the first is the committee of the whole meeting of May 19, 2020, and a recommendation firstly that the minutes be received. Councillor Crowell, thank you. Councillor D'Andrade, and thank you. All in favor of receipt? Thank you very much. The first item on that agenda is the recommendation from the planner relative to the temporary use permit on North Road. And I believe that comes up again in the meeting. I know it doesn't come up again in the meeting. So the recommendation that the for recreational vehicle site 718 North Road, and the council authorized the temporary use permit for the property for a 3-year term, subject to the property owner meeting the following conditions. So the corporate officer.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, that's actually under admin reports. It's not part of the committee reports.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is admin report. I apologize for that. Yes. So then we'll go to the, I knew I'd seen it somewhere, Director of Planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So the property owners and tenants within 100 meters of 718 North Road were mailed letters of the temporary use permit application on May 20th, and an ad was published in the Coast Reporter on May 23rd and May 30th to notify neighbors of tonight's meeting for the decision. Staff also received referral comments. So the Ministry of Transportation had no concerns. Vancouver Coastal Health said the creation of affordable and diverse accommodation generally contributes positively to public health. Solid and liquid waste is not allowed to accumulate on the parcel. The fire department asked for a fire safety plan, which is a condition of the temporary use permit. Infrastructure Services stated that the RV park will be at the top end of a sanitary line, which may become an issue when flow coming from Upper Gibsons is diverted to North Road and then gravity fed to the wastewater treatment plant. This will mean reduced flow to convey the sanitary sewage from the RV park and potential blockage of the line. So for this reason, they've requested that the applicant pay the costs for the town's engineer to look at the implications of this. And so there is an added number 6 on the recommendation is a security bond of $2,000 to cover the cost of that report. From the submission, staff received 10 letters from neighbors. Of the 10 letters, 7 opposed the RV park, citing issues or concerns with tenants, unattractive property, and the devaluing of property values. 3 did not have concerns, sharing that the property has been used as an RV campground on and off for many years. Neighbors did provide some conditions that would ease concerns. This would include council passing a resolution to not extend the temporary use permit, asking for screening, and only allowing RVs on the property. Staff note that there have been questions raised from neighbors about sea cans being added to the northeast of the property. No sea cans are proposed to be added. They are shown on the site plan, and they initially wanted to add sea cans, but they took those off. So the property owner has clarified that there will be no sea cans and there's no intention of adding sea cans. The recommendations are on page 1 of the staff report. There is a missing recommendation here, and that is for the mayor to allow any person who feels affected by these applications to have an opportunity to speak to council tonight. Staff's recommendation is to issue the temporary use permit subject to meeting a list of conditions no later than June 30th. Council may change the term of the temporary use permit or change the conditions of the permit and or deny the permit. So in the scenario, if council does discuss denial of the permit, it should be known that tenants are unable to be evicted at this time because of COVID. And after the COVID-19 pandemic, then, and when the state of emergency lifts at that point, then we would ask that the tenants be evicted and follow up with by law enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. First, I'll ask the motion to receive the report. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Ludwig, thank you. All in favor of receipt? Thank you. Next, I will, before we have discussion with council, I will ask for an opportunity. Is there anybody in the gallery tonight who wishes to speak to this issue, and through the corporate officer?
And at this time, I'll just ask everybody who's in the meeting as an attendee, if you wish to speak, please use the raise your hand feature at the bottom of the screen, and I'll turn on your audio and video.
So asking for the first time, and I'll ask a second time. Is there anybody who wishes to speak to this item? And I'll ask a third time. Is there anybody who wishes to speak to this item? So hearing none, thank you, Corporate Officer. We'll go now to council for discussion. Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. When this came up to the Planning and Development Committee, you know, I thought this is great. It's a viable option to provide some affordable housing. And then as the letters came in, and I took a little closer look at the property, a few concerns came up. You know, we asked for a landscape plan, and to that end, I assumed that the owner of the property was going to create a little more attractive living environment for the people resident there. I'm looking at the information in the agenda today. That's not the case. Because it's a short-term project, they don't feel that's necessary. So I'm a little concerned with the proximity that the units are in to one another. And I also have a concern from a point of view, particularly on the Hillcrest side of the property. The units are very, very close together. And I would have concern because most of them are using bottled gas for heating, that, you know, if there was ever an issue there, those units would go up like a string of firecrackers. And there's no real proper fire separation. The fire department in the report we have before us tonight didn't really go into that. They said they'll be looking at the property. Also, we're talking a temporary RV park. There's a trailer and an ATCO trailer on the property, which aren't RVs. The other aspect of this, which is a really sort of gray area, is under the Residential Tenancy Act, and I'm going to assume for the purpose of this conversation that people residing in this park would fall under the mobile home park guidelines when it comes to term of stay. In most municipalities, there's a bylaw how long someone can live in an RV park within a community, and I don't believe we have such a bylaw. You're not allowed to live in an RV on your own property. You can store it on your own property, but you can't live in it. And most municipalities have like a 160-day maximum that you're allowed to live. So we're now suggesting that people can live here for 3 years. But under residential tenancy, if you're being removed from an RV or mobile home park for the property being used for another purpose, the tenants have to be given a year's notice, allowing them enough time to find another place. And in fact, if they can't find another place, the owner of the property is responsible, A, for paying their moving and also compensating them in rent things. So I'm just wondering, are we opening a can of worms here? I would like to see, you know, I would like to have seen a sort of landscape plan that was indicating a little more humane conditions than what are currently there. That I noticed the tarps have been cleaned up, but by nature, RVs are not intended to be lived in, and why most people during the winter have covers on them to keep them from leaking. So, we've asked on one hand, take the tarps away, but what are people supposed to do when it starts leaking? I know there have been some bylaw issues with the property. There doesn't seem to be any covenant with it regard to pets, and the incident that immediately comes to mind is a young child on their way to school was attacked by a dog that was on the property. He ended up having to go through rabies treatment because the dog mysteriously vanished. So they couldn't test it for rabies. So they had to assume the worst, and he had to go through that, which is not pleasant. So I'm just a little concerned that some of these things that are being pushed back at the town to monitor are going to create, like, I'm all for affordable housing, and I applauded the thing when it came to the committee, but I have serious reservation about what the implications of this are going to be, and I can't support it at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Kroll. Councillor Diandrad.
Oh, I think Councillor Crowe pretty much said probably everything. But to me, I was at the same, right? Thinking about supporting, due to the lack of affordable housing. But after I learned a lot of the irregulations with this site, right? The amount of time that has been, precedents in the past, council wasn't aware. And I don't feel comfortable because if the town didn't have any capability of monitoring in the past, it's not going to be able to do now. And I'm really concerned with residents raise the devaluation of property. In a place where we have a structure like the supportive housing, which I know many people raise concerns, but it's different. You have human resources, you have committee supporting, you have infrastructure. And here, I think we're gonna allow something that we don't know the consequences. And I don't think it's fair to put a onus on a neighborhood and acknowledging that the town won't have a manpower to do anything. So I at this point, I don't feel comfortable in supporting this. And after, where did these people go, right? So we provide them something that it doesn't have, like Councilor Crowe was saying, in terms of laws, right? We don't have the backup of the law. And then after, so we will bring more people to this RV, and then what do we do with them? Say, sorry, time's up. So I'm afraid that we will create more problems than solve. So for this reason, I at this point, I cannot support.
Councillor Ludwig, would you, Councillor Ludwig?
I have a question, first of all. Can someone please remind me what the long-term plan for this site is? What happens after 2 years? Director of Planning?
Through the mayor, the applicant has indicated interest to develop an apartment on this property, but wants to apply for this temporary use permit to keep the RVs there until they go forward with developing housing. The applicant is in the audience as well, if you want to direct questions at him.
Okay, go back to Councillor Kroll. Did you want to say something, Councillor Ludwig? Sorry.
Thinking.
Go back to Councillor Kroll while you think. Yeah.
To the Director of Planning, through you, the Mayor, you use, and it always gets me, you use the term apartment. And my mind, because of my background in doing property management, I always think rental. And you use the term apartment, and it's often a purchase condominium. So is it a rental complex, or is it a condominium complex?
We don't have a development application in front of us, so it's hard to say. I mean, the intent was to build residential, whether it's strata and sold or whether it's rental. I don't have those details.
And we don't know if it's affordable rental.
I think the intent was supposed to be affordable, but again, we don't have an application in front of us, so it's hard to say what it actually will look like in 3 years.
Thank you.
Councillors, would you like to invite the proponent to speak? Nice. You might be able to answer some of your questions. I see a willingness for that. Okay, corporate officer, would you invite the proponent to come forward if he's available, if he wishes to speak? Mr. Danworth? You're still muted there, Chris.
Hello?
Yes, I got you. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, you've heard, I assume, some of the concerns, council, and some of the concerns raised by the community. Do you have a kind of at this time, a response to those concerns?
Well, I got home from work late tonight, so I didn't get all of it, but I picked up on some of the conversations with maybe the type of tenants that are there, and about landscaping and things like that, and also about the proposed apartment building, whether it's condos or rentals. And my plan is that it's 100% rentals, and will be affordable on the second floor in it. There'll be commercial on the bottom, affordable on the second floor, maybe even more, and then market rent on the higher ones. But that's in the drawing is done and it's there, but I haven't proceeded to go for permits and anything because it's going to take a while to get all the engineering work and stuff in. So that's why I've applied for a temporary use permit for these RVs. Now, I know that some people are saying that RVs aren't meant for permanent residential, they're only part-time or whatever. My comment there is maybe you should wake up and smell the coffee. There is tons of people living in RVs because they have no other option. And the type of people that are on my place, they have no other option. They have nowhere to go. And it kind of seems to me like the council is gearing towards maybe I'm a slum landlord and maybe we shouldn't have that. Well, if they're not there, you tell me where they're going, because there's nowhere. And that I'm not making any money at it. It's not even really a break even between the hydro bill and all the rest of the services. We barely make it. So I'm just accommodating. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether we go ahead or not, because it's not a money-making venture for me. I just thought it would be a good thing for the community because there's no place for people to live. I mean, some people have been living in their cars, for God's sake. So I'm just trying to accommodate a little bit. That's all it's about with me.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Danworth. I just want to clarify, council hasn't expressed the opinion that you expressed. This did go out for consultation with the neighbors, and what you maybe missed is that the 10 responses that came back, 7 were opposed to the proposal. But there may be ways around that, and there may be ways. Council also expressed concern for, well, what of the future? You know, if it's a 3-year temporary permit, at a certain point in time, you're going to have to give notice to those people to vacate, so they are going to have to go somewhere else, and how that will affect and how easily that will be to be done. But I understand what you're trying to do there. I do personally see the need for low cost affordable housing in the community. That location was certainly present when I was campaigning to run for council. I was aware of it. I would like to see it cleaned up. I too am concerned for the longer term, and I would like to see maybe a clause that be added to the temporary use permit, requiring that appropriate notice be given to everybody who goes in there of the temporary nature of the use of the property, as well as a notice as to when the temporary use permit will expire, so that the people are given notice, an opportunity to make other arrangements for themselves. There is a security bond relative to the cost of the engineer review of the implication of the town sanitary sewer. And I guess I would ask the question to the director of infrastructure, is that intended to also consider which sounds like a multi-story apartment building to go on that site? Or are you looking at that implication or just the immediate use? Mr. Newman?
At this point, I'm just looking at the immediate use, and often with RVs, they don't generate as much liquid as you would with a shower and a bath and so on that you would in a normal home. And because we're making some changes to the sanitary system, that will now be the end of the line, and so any kind of blockages are more likely to be occurring now that we've lost that upstream flow. But as far as future use, no, I'm not really looking at that. And in fact, they're not, they don't necessarily have to connect to that sewer. There is one in North Road, so we've got options for that.
Thank you, Mr. Dan Roth, for your comments and for your added information to council. Councillor Kroll.
A question for Mr. Dan Roth. Will there be is there proposed to be a resident caretaker?
Mr. Dan Roth. You're still muted there, Mr. Dan Roth. There you
go. Could you repeat that? I'm not getting a very loud.
Okay.
Would it be your intention to have a resident caretaker on site?
No, there won't be a resident caretaker on site 24 hours a day, but there is somebody there during the day most of the time. And I do have one of the tenants on site that does chip in and help out if there's any concerns, and him and I are in contact all the time.
Thank you.
Councillor Ludwig.
Mr. Danroth, why are you requesting to increase the size of the campground? From what I understand, there's currently 7 RVs there, and I respect that having them relocate would be very challenging, but why are you requesting to increase the size of it if your long-term plan is to develop it?
The only reason I thought that we should have more, and I don't want to be applying to expand it. It was like just to do it all at once, and I've turned down currently one person a month for quite a while, and so I know that there should be a limit on the property because of the size of it and the facilities that are there. So that's the only reason that I asked for more, so that I could accommodate a few more, but lately I've just been turning them down.
Thank you. To the Director of Planning, I note that the temporary use permit does not propose itself within the permit a maximum number of sites. Would it be consideration to do that?
Yes, the permit itself limits the number of sites to 12 because that's the number of hookups on the property.
Looking at that, I just didn't see that in the term, but it is in the permit. Okay.
It's in the permit, yeah.
Okay.
It's number 5I.
Okay, I'm just looking at the resolution. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Would it be possible to include in the permit the requirement that tenants be notified of the term of the tenure, so that they don't go in there thinking that they've got a life tenure, that we're going to be surprised at 3 years from now when they are removed. Because this may well simply be I don't know if it's going to be an RV park or it's going to be a manufactured home park in classification.
Yeah, we could add that as a condition in the permit.
Yeah.
It's my intention to try and get the apartment building under construction sooner than this permit will expire. So I'm obviously going to have to give the tenants plenty of notice when I'm ready to start construction.
Yes.
So it's not going to be a permanent RV park. There's no advantage to me of that. I'm looking to put up a considerably large-sized apartment rental building. That's my goal.
Okay. Okay. The council, Councilor DeAndrat.
If I may, Mr. Damroth, you said you're turning people down. I mean, my concern is that these people will be coming there to leave, but then eventually you have to turn them down regardless. And where are they going? Where do they go?
Well, they don't have anywhere to go now. That's why they're there. So, I mean, if we get the permit for the period of time that we're allowed to get it, that once I am ready to start construction, they'll have, I'm assuming, about a year to find a place. And that's a lot better than what it is right now. Because if you don't allow it, then they're gone tomorrow. So what do we do then?
But then what we do next? Yeah, I'm very concerned.
Councilor Ludwig.
I think right now I'm leaning towards supporting the temporary use permit for the residents that are currently on site, but not expanding it. I don't know where else they would go at this time. But I don't think it's necessary, or I think if it does open up a bigger challenge down the road.
So you supporting the number or the individuals? In other words, if one leaves, can one come on, or is it?
It would be the number. I mean, I don't think that we can regulate the individuals, but the people that, if there's 7 units there right now, then I would support them staying with the understanding that this can't be renewed. And so, I mean, if I was in that situation, I'd start looking for somewhere else to live now, but at least I wouldn't be evicted. I mean, if this was going to be a long-term RV park that was going to get nicely cleaned up with a nice fence and nice landscaping and you know, was going to be managed in that capacity going forward, I might have felt differently. It's a temporary solution that I think is just going to become a larger challenge.
Councilor Kroll.
You're on.
So you're muted, Councilor
Sorry,
Kroll.
got it. Just to clarify with Mr. Danroth, I'm all in support of anything that can be done to help people in this housing crisis we're in. But I am concerned about, you know, creating other problems spiraling out of this. You know, I'm willing to consider what Councillor Ludwig was suggesting in not expanding the park anymore. And to that end, because there are 12 hookups, thinning it out a bit so that stretch down the Hillcrest side, there's a little more space to them to alleviate some of the concern with respect to spacing and fire. I was the property manager of the Poplars Park years ago, and RVs, when they burn, they go pretty quick and they take anything in proximity to them. And if there, as I mentioned earlier, if there's propane on them, it's you know, it's an even bigger issue. So, you know, were the units spread out a little more, I would consider it. Also, I have a question. Are there any pet restrictions in the park, i.e. large dogs over a certain size?
Mr. Danroth, pet restrictions? Can we take him off mute, please?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm unable to do that for him.
Okay. Mr. Danroth, can you take yourself off mute? There you go.
Hello? Can you
Yeah,
hear me?
we can hear you now, yes.
Okay, so I don't particularly want any pets on site. Right now, there's a couple of cats and there's a couple of very, very small dogs. And I'm finding that the owners don't really clean up and look after their dogs as much as they want, no matter how much I pester them. So I really don't want pets there, and I may try and enforce that a bit, but there's never been any large dogs there. And I think a while ago, somebody mentioned that somebody'd been bit there. There's certainly been nobody bitten on that property that I'm aware of at any time. And I'd be happy to not have animals there.
Okay. Let me ask you some questions then, Mr. Danroth. Are you willing to proceed with this on the basis of 7 units and to spread them out within the site?
I think that I could spread them out and still accommodate a few more units. But if you want to restrict it to 7, then so be it. But I can spread them out a bit more, and I've got existing hydro hookups and stuff in place, but I haven't tried to do that because I've been waiting for this decision here.
Okay. And you understand there'll be no sea cans on the property?
Yeah, I'll have to readdress that when we do construction, because once you start construction, somebody has to have a place to store their tools and equipment.
I believe that would be under construction at the time.
Yeah, so
And,
I understand that. I took that off the table some months ago.
And further, would you give notice to your tenants of the temporary use permit when it is issued?
Absolutely.
With those agreements, council, and changes to the temporary use permit, the director of planning, are you comfortable with those changes?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I can add them to the permit.
Okay. So with those changes and as amendments then to the proposed resolution on page 21, and the term, the maximum term being 3 years being added to it as well, the maximum term of 3 years with no renewal. Mr. Danroth, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. The council is council comfortable under those conditions? It's Councillor Ladwig.
Yes, I am comfortable with those conditions. I just want to make sure that somewhere in there that it actually states that the number of units allowed on the site is 7.
Yes, it would be an amendment to 5.1. It'd be up to 5. It'd be up to 7 units. Yeah, and that's on page 35. Sorry, 35 being the 35 is where the temporary use permit is located. Yeah, you'll see it there, and that they would be spread out. So, Councilor Ladwig, could you move that? Okay. I'll second it, just so I don't complicate the lives of my other 2 councilors right now. And any further discussion now is on the table. Councilor Deirdre.
Since this resemble short-term, right, would all the specification of the name and phone number for the people who will be at the site will be made available at the town, as we talked about the short terms? Could we include this clause too, so the neighbors would know who to call if something
Mr. Danroth, is there, there's an on-site person that is assisting you. Is he a contact for the site if there was a problem?
Yeah, he has a cell phone. He contacts me, and he has keys for the hydro and storage room if he needs it.
So if there were complaints that either our bylaw officer could get hold of him directly?
They can get a hold of him or me. I'm pretty close to there. I'm 2 minutes away.
Okay, so moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Councillor Kroll.
Sort of in keeping with what Councillor Dendretti mentioned, because of the responses we got from the neighbors, the number that were opposed to this, outweighs the number that were pro, and I'm just not feeling totally comfortable that we've addressed the concerns that have been brought by the neighbors, like, as long as there are clean lines. And I don't know, with a temporary use permit, if things start going off the rails, we're sort of stuck with it.
Mhm.
We don't have once it's issued, we've sort of, I'm just concerned that we're not going to have the control we need on it. And still not feeling warm and fuzzy.
Could say that we have more control under a temporary use permit with the terms than we have today on the site, which has been nothing. But speaking in favor of it, I do see the need. I certainly would not be in favor of forcing people under these circumstances to relocate our community. It's tough enough as it is, and Mr. Danroth wants to work with us, and I think we should give him the benefit of the doubt on that and move forward and ensure at least the continuance of 7 residents in the town of Gibsons at low income rates. So seeing no more hands up, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? 1 opposed? 2 opposed? Unfortunately, Mr. Danroth, that is defeated. There has to be a majority of council voting in favor so that it has been defeated. So I'll leave that with you and without further words. Thank you. Thank you for your willingness to talk to us. We'll move on now to development permit 721 for 721 Wynn Road. And I'd invite Katie Thomas or the Director of Planning to join us, whoever is speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm here tonight. So the town of Gibsons received an application to vary the zoning bylaw to reduce the parking required and to reduce the minimum unit size for a property at 721 Wynn Road. Notifications were sent to properties within 50 meters of the subject property. 3 submissions were received in total from 2 individuals. The submissions support or share no concerns with the requested variance. The referral comments received from the fire department recommend the property be sprinklered. The BC Building Code does not require the building to be retrofitted with sprinklers, and the applicant has been working with a code consultant to ensure that the building is satisfactory to the fire department and from a fire standpoint. The building department supports bringing the property into compliance. Infrastructure services have no concerns on the unit size and shared some concern over demand for parking on Wynn Road. Staff note that the building has been a non-conforming building for a number of years, and the current proposal increases the on-site parking by 1 space and has also provided a loading space. So the town has not received any bylaw complaints for parking. Recommendations are listed on page 1 and recommend issuance of the DVP. Staff also recommend another another recommendation, which would be for the mayor to allow any person who feels affected by this variance to have an opportunity to be heard tonight.
Thank you.
Thank
I was
you.
looking for that recommendation. Thank you. Yeah. So first of all, like someone wish to move the report, receive the report. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Diandrad. I think that was a hand up, but it made it look like a glass of wine up, but good for you. So all in favor of receipt? Thank you. Okay. And before we go to discussion, I would ask if there's anybody present in the room who wishes to speak, and I'll ask you indicate to our corporate officer, and please speak up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, I'll just remind everybody in the meeting as an attendee to please use the raise the hand feature at the bottom of the screen, and I'll turn on your microphone and video. And Mr. Mayor, we do have a question from Silas White, and I'll just move him over.
Okay, Mr. White, welcome. You're still on mute, I see on your side.
For me.
Thank you.
Video on too.
We can hear
So
you.
I don't have a question. I just want to clarify some of my input. I did, both another neighbor and I raised the landscaping plan in our most recent input. And that was suggested by the property owner, just to let the staff know about our concerns there. And I fully recognize that that's not part of the of council's decision-making process. So I'm not expecting council to consider that at all and just focus on the main points there. But I just put that forward just for future for staff and the property owner to take it under advisement. Thanks.
Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you. I'll ask a second time. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to the issue? This is the variance permit. And I'll ask a third time. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to the development variance permit? Seeing none, I'll refer then to council. Does council have any discussion of the permit? The permit itself, as you'll see in the package, is on page 45 of your package. Councillor Ladwig.
Yeah, I promise. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but I'm going to beat it one more time. I don't have an issue with this project. I'm still struggling with the process. And the process that I'm struggling with is I still don't understand. And I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to beat a dead horse here, but I still don't understand why we're asking this proponent or property owner to vary his property instead of issuing him just a temporary use permit and then amending the zoning if we know that the commercial zoning is inadequate for our community. If we want smaller apartments, then we should be amending that so that we don't have to go through this every time somebody comes to us with a commercial zoning with residential units on it that don't conform. So again, I'm not going to beat this to death. I feel like there's a better tool than a variance permit. I feel like a temporary use permit, which can last for years. We just approved one for 3 years for the.
Did not approve it.
Sorry, we did not approve it. You're correct. My apologies. But you understand what I'm saying. I'm struggling with the process, but that's it.
Councillor Kroll.
And I hear what Councillor Ludwig is saying, and sort of agree with her. But you know, by us passing this at this point, the proponent can get on with it. It may take us another 2 or 3 years to do it, and we recognize the fact that it needs to be done, and staff are working on it and looking towards it. But in the meantime, it allows it to move forward. The variance permit, I think, is a little vague. It's in itself, it's a temporary use. So, you know, we do the permit, we extend it again, and then he has to come back and say, okay, now does this look like I'm complying with what you've drafted? And there may still be some tweaks. At least this way, he's allowed to proceed. And, you know, I appreciate it's awkward, but I also appreciate that this building has been, you know, it's sat empty for ages. It's sat with a for sale sign in front of it. The proponent is, you know, really sort of bent over backwards to improve the look of it, and you know, provide some housing. The parking issue, I think, is a moot point because it's mixed commercial and residential. So when people are off at work, their car is not going to be there if they even have a car. And so, you know, that's not an issue. You know, I'm all in favor of moving the proposal as staff have recommended. It's, but I do agree that, you know, staff are sort of dancing as fast as they can, trying to come up with the appropriate guidelines for us to deal with. But in the meantime, this project can be cleared off the table.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Dad, do you have any comment on this? Okay, so if somebody care to move the resolution that's proposed, and that's the council authorized issuance of DVP 2020-01 for 721 Wynn Road. Councillor D'Andrade, Councillor Crowell, further discussion by council? All in favor? Okay, that is approved. Thank you. So turn back into my agenda. Okay, now the 7.3 is a Director of Finance financial statement, the annual SOFI report, statement of financial investment, and turn it over to the Director of Finance. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I can see Councillor Crowell is looking for your attention though, so I'll redirect it
sorry.
there.
I was looking the way. It's Councillor Crowell.
Just something for the record, with respect to the North Road RV park. My understanding that even though we have not approved the temporary use permit, as a landlord, Mr. Danroth is probably going to have, even irregardless of COVID, is likely going to have to give the people in that facility a year's notice, because they do, I believe, fall under the Mobile Home Park Act, and you can't just sort of give someone a regular, you know, 30-day notice for whatever. So, you know, the fact that regardless of COVID or not, their notice would be from the time he can legally give notice, and they in fact will likely have a year. And, you know, maybe we have created a problem because now we don't have the control of the TUP. But I just wanted to raise that as a thought.
We'll let him deal with that through the appropriate process. So, which I'm sure he's aware of as a landlord. So. Okay, sorry, Director of Finance, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as a public reporting body, the town is subject to the filing requirements of the Financial Information Act and the accompanying financial information regulation. So the information to be filed with the minister is more generally known as the Statement of Financial Information, and we call it SOFI for short. Some of the information to be filed is identical that is required under the community charter. For example, the required to have audited financial statements. There is additional information, however, under the SOFI reporting requirements. One requirement is to report on the salaries and expenses of staff members whose total remuneration for the year is in excess of the prescribed amount, and also to report supplier names if they have been paid in excess of $25,000 per year. Additional, the SOFI requirements require that a statement signed by myself as a finance officer attesting to the accuracy and completeness of the financial information, and also a management report that accompanies that as well. So the process for this reporting requirement is that council must approve the package of materials to be submitted under the SOFI requirements. And I've attached my report to the, my report is attached that will be submitted to the minister. And at this point, my recommendation is that council receive and approve the 2019 SOFI as required under the Financial Information Act. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And council motion to receive. Councillor Crowell, Councillor Ladwig, all in favor of receipt. Thank you. That's received. Council, do you have any discussion, any questions to the Director of Finance on the report? Okay, thank you, Director of Finance. You've solved all the problems and answered all the questions already. So I'll turn it then to recommendation that the 2019 Statement of Financial Information be approved. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Ladwig, all in favor of approval? Thank you. All approved. And Councillor Diendrad, I can't see you. I am dealing with a majority of council. There you go, if you were voting. So, thank you. Okay, so the next one is the 7.4, and that's the Director of Finance reporting of council remuneration expenses and contracts, starting on page 111. Back to the Director of Finance. Is there anything you wish to say about this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So section 168 of the community charter requires at least once a year, a council must have prepared a report separately listing council remuneration, expenses, benefits, and contracts. And given that much of the information provided is also contained in the SOFI report, we feel that it's appropriate to provide the report to council at this time, the same as time as the SOFI is being received. And so the information that is required is reported on page 2 of the report. And I'm recommending that council receive the council remuneration expense and contracts report for 2019. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And council move receipt of the report. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Diendrad, thank you. All in favor of receipt? Thank you. Does council have any questions on the report? Anything they'd like to ask? Okay, seeing none. Oh, sorry, it was Councillor Ladwig. Sorry, yes, see you.
Just curious, I know some municipalities report staff salaries. I noticed we don't do that. Is there a reason for that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the staff salaries are included in the statement of financial information, and that was the previous report just provided. It's quite a lengthy report in there, but it is in there.
Okay.
What's the limit now, Director of Finance? Was it 75,000 or?
It's still 75,000. Yet it hasn't been changed for quite some time.
So it's everything over 75,000 has to be reported.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much again, Director of Finance. And we'll move now to council reports. And I'll ask if any members of council had anything they wish to report this time. I'm going to, if I could, just a follow-up to last week's meeting. And council will recall that we had the presentation on the Sunshine Coast Together, and that's the social connectedness and community resilience in the age of COVID-19. And this was a delegation to council. This was Naomi Flechette, Executive Director of Resilient Coast, made a presentation. Subsequently to making a presentation to us, and our resolution, I believe, was that we would support this project at a regional level, and knowing that she was going to proceed also to the District of Sechelt and to the regional district. She did present to the District of Sechelt, and Darnella Seegers, the mayor, has then contacted me last week. So our CEO and myself sat on a conference call on Monday talking about this. And the general plan right now is that they will proceed forward. They're still going to make a presentation to the regional district, but they're looking at proceeding and with an application that would perhaps be signed by all the local governments on the coast, including the Sechelt Indian Nation, and applying for the full amount that we are eligible for. I believe we're going to be applying for $15,000 in the hopes that we might maybe get 10. It's unlikely that we're going to get the 15 because I think there's only a total of 20 awards to be made province-wide, and that there will be some leadership and more information come out on this, but the project in that case has moved forward, although I don't believe David has been presented yet to the regional district. Councillor Kroll, are you aware? No, it hasn't. Yeah. So, and I'm sure they'll be supportive as well of it moving forward. But it still has a lot of validity, especially in this day and age when everybody is social distancing and self-isolating. And we're already aware that that's a concern among seniors. And it's the idea of providing best practices and examples of how communities can get together and do things together at the community level. Much like as I use the example of Parkland, getting out and working in the flower beds together. And that's being done up here. If you get a chance to come through and see the changes that have taken place. And so that I think it's well worthwhile. And the coordinators, April Struthers, working with Naomi Flechette, well, I think will do a superb job of getting the word out and encouraging communities, neighborhoods, streets, blocks to get involved in this kind of program. And I think that's very encouraging and very helpful for everybody, especially when we're going to try to get together and find different ways of doing that in the future. So just an update on that project. So appreciate that. A quick update on Citizen on Patrol. That is still active, still going forward. I will be basing my next mayor's message on Citizen on Patrol, and that'll be out this Friday. I'll work with Elizabeth on that, and we're looking at maybe adjusting some of the times because it's lighter earlier still. And so that the need to be patrolling the streets at 7 o'clock is probably not as important as patrolling the streets at 1:30. So we'll be looking at those kind of things, but it's still a very good program and very much supported by the RCMP. So sometime on Friday, you'll receive my my report on that, and I think you'll find it to be very interesting. So, Councilor Diendrad, I saw your hand. You're muted. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks. First, I would like to just when you were talking about communities getting together outside, I think this is a great opportunity for emergency planning, right? Because other than that, everybody's involved in their own life and busy and summer and then winter. So I think this is a good forced way of planning something that we should be planning regardless, right? It's very important. The Harmony Hall, the Gibson Senior Society, they have gone back to activities, not full activities, but they are having their muffins and coffee and the meals being served and activities like as they went in the past, they had in the past, but with all the guidelines. So that's quite encouraging too. And they have been very active. The new president, very responsive. So they are up and running.
Good, thank you. Eilish, Youth Council McKenzie.
Hello.
Hey.
So I don't really have like any huge updates, but I did have something that I really wanted to talk about because it's something that the young people in the community have been talking about very consistently over the course of the last week and a bit. And it's something that I'm sure everyone has heard about on the news. So on May 25th, a Black man named George Floyd was murdered in the United States by a police officer. And other officers were also complicit in that. And obviously, we've seen on the news, there's major protests, there's even been some rioting. And so I just wanted to talk about that tonight because I feel like when we're up here in Canada, we feel very safe, as though like police brutality and systematic as an oppression isn't something that we have to talk about. But it really is, because those issues aren't just Black issues and they aren't just American issues. They're issues that pertain to everybody everywhere. And especially in Gibsons, I know that obviously we don't really hear about that very much on a local level, but racism still exists in Gibsons. At the high school, there's lots of kids that don't understand why you can't say the N-word or other offensive things like that. And we saw it earlier in the year when there was demonstrations in solidarity with the Wet'suwet'en people. People were hurling racial insults at Maya Gabriel and other demonstrators. And so I think because of that, it's really important that as a community, we start to call out and actively denounce racism, because obviously it's wrong. And we have to make sure that we don't give it any space to grow in our community, and we have to do our best to shrink it. And so I just wanted to make sure that that was said tonight, and hopefully we can continue to talk about it as it is relevant to do so. Yeah, and I also just wanted to mention that everything that I've learned and I'm mentioning right now, it's due to what other young people are sharing on social media. Young people are doing a fantastic job right now of spreading that information and making sure that this isn't overlooked. And so I think that deserves a solid shout out. And yeah, I would just like to finish off by mentioning that on June 7th at 1 p.m. in Hackett Park, there is going to be a demonstration. So I'd encourage people to go to that, but please, if you're sick, don't go. Please bring a face mask, and please remember to maintain social distance. That's everything from me.
Thank you very much, Eilish. Thank you for bringing that up. It's always a challenge to know when and how to bring social issues like that, especially when they happen elsewhere and up into our local government issues. I am reminded that April Struthers of Whitworks made a presentation to council, I believe, over a year ago, and she does focus her work on anti-racism issues, and she's associated with Naomi Flechette, and I think that maybe at some point in time it would be worthwhile our getting April to do a workshop here, even if it's a Zoom workshop or a workshop with youth or a workshop with the community on anti-racism, because it's something that we have seen, and it's not just racism, it's homophobia and other issues that creep into our community. I appreciate you bringing that up, as I appreciate you brought up social issues in the past while you've been on a youth council, and the voice of the youth, the views of the youth are very important to us, and I appreciate you discharging that responsibility to us. Thank you. Councillor D'Andrade.
Yeah, this is a really important issue, and this is tied up with inequality. And we have been seeing with the COVID how inequality plays a big role, right? So I wonder, since we are getting so used to do Zoom meetings, and Zoom meetings can accommodate 100 people, if we could have a community dialogue that touch upon on these issues, not too far away in time, because I think as we are starting to move towards a phase 2, people at summer counts, people will be more dispersed, but I think it's a great reflection what happened in our town, these days, that compared to what happened in the States is very mild, but it's still, and whatever that's happening with COVID that is exposing, and the issues that we have to deal, like we had to deal in this council, right? Making decisions that is very hard decision, because you want to support, and how do we move forward? So I'm just suggesting that perhaps we think about it sooner than later for a dialogue.
I think that's an awesome idea.
Thank you, Councilor Mackenzie, for bringing that.
I also just really quickly, I hope that the media paid attention to that conversation a little bit, and I also hope if they're thinking of quoting anyone or anything, maybe look for quotes from like Black activists and people that whose voices in this conversation really matter, because I think what I said and what Mayor Beamish said and what Councillor DeAndretti said. They're great, but also we aren't really the focus of this conversation. It's not really about us as not we're white. So yeah, I just hope that if the media does talk about it, there's accompaniment of Black voices as well.
Thank you. Well said. Councillor Kroll.
I just wanted to thank Youth Councillor Mackenzie, because it is a huge issue. We tend to think of the problem being south of the border. It's not our problem. But, you know, I've got Asian friends in this community that have been attacked because they've been blamed with the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's, you know, totally inexcusable. And, you know, very sadly, racism is something that's learned. You know, there's no racism gene per se. It's behavior that people, you know, when it's condoned, it's made acceptable. And I think it's become very difficult because of examples that are being set by leaders south of the border, that because it's a leader, it's acceptable. It's not. And I commend Councillor Mackenzie for bringing the issue up. And I think it's something we all really have to be aware of. Like as Mayor Beamish said, it's not just, you know, a black-white issue or, you know, different colors. You know, it's, you know, the, it's sad that, you know, society is at the point it is today and we're still dealing with it. It hasn't gone away. And as soon as you think it's not your problem, it's an even bigger problem, because that's when it creeps in. So I think it's something that we all need to work together on, and you know, commend Ailish for bringing it up.
If council's okay, I will follow up with April Struthers. I see she's applying for the anti-racism funding again this year, and we'll be able to we could work with her on that and see if we can make that happen. You know, 2 years ago when she came to us and talked about anti-racism and participate in that, I certainly wasn't aware of the issues that I am aware of today. And I think that we're probably all in a different place today than we were at that time. So it's time we revisited that issue. Councillor Kroll.
Are we going to move on with council reports? I've just got a couple of things.
Yes, I am. Yeah, your turn.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. I've been participating on the Business Watch, and I did forward in Seashelt. They followed our example and started a Business Watch. And something they've done is they've created a sign that businesses can actually put on their door or in a window. And it just basically says, you know, this business is being monitored. Just very subtle awareness, the supporters of the project. So I think it's something, you know, as the program, if the program's going to move forward, you know, just creating an awareness doesn't hurt. From a regional district point of view, I think people are aware of the new ferry schedule. I'm looking at Councillor Ladwig, who still rides the boat. There's this new ferry schedule that's come out. It has been very alarming to a lot of people, particularly business owners, and, you know, areas that, you know, we tend to not think about on a daily basis, but the transport companies, they're really going to be clobbered by this, because, you know, their window of operation is being narrowed. To that end, Director Pratt at the regional district proposed a letter be sent to BC Ferries. I recommended that letter also be, you know, co-signed by the town of Gibsons, the district of Seashelt, the Seashelt First Nations, Cathet, and Powell River, because it's something that's going to impact very dramatically on everyone on the coast. BC Ferries not always being the most fleet of foot, you know, may not be able to respond quickly, but, you know, it's something that can't be continued. And the fact that they did this without community dialogue is even a little more alarming. They just sort of did it and, well, this is what we're doing, too bad, so sad, and if you don't like it, get over it. So I believe the letter will be coming to the town, and the Ferry Commission, the email boxes have been running hot with just endless back and forth. So, keep an eye on that, and any support for, for this letter going out would be appreciated. The regional district is also dealing with huge issues like bus service. Currently, the bus service is being operated on a Saturday schedule. Obviously, it's going to become more difficult because it's going to have to adjust to this new ferry schedule. So be aware for changes in bus service. Also, there's going to be some changes happening probably in recreation. Because of social distancing and one thing and another, it's facilities can't operate the same way they have been operating. So staff at the regional district are looking at what facilities can be operated most efficiently within the new restrictions that they have to be faced with. So again, they're looking at trying to get the facilities back up and running, but how that happens is they're working on. And that's about it for now for me.
Yeah, on the ferry issue, my conversation with the Nicholas Simon, our MLA, on Friday evening, he assured myself and Director Pratt, Chair Pratt, and Mayor Seegers that he has raised this issue with the minister, and he anticipates a further announcement on ferry schedule to change the schedule for the Sunshine Coast. So we'll watch for that coming, but we will support a letter coming from the regional district as well when that comes forward. I have one more thing, and I'm going to go back to Councillor McKenzie as well. But one is that you'll recall the community leaders meeting that we talked about holding at the end of March, and it got pushed aside by COVID. Have asked staff to arrange that to be put on the schedule again, and I'm looking at the last Tuesday of June, which is not a council week. And it would be a Zoom meeting in that case. And we can accommodate a good number of people. But I think it's important that we have that conversation with our community and the organizations that we deal with, and see how they're doing, kind of take the temperature of the community, see what their needs are. And we never did get to present to them our strategic plan. I'd like to do that and have that material and have that discussion with them. So watch for that coming. That will be, we'll facilitate that. As I say, the last Tuesday. And I'm going to go back to Councillor McKenzie on two things. One, get her to talk again about the youth council for the Sunshine Coast. And I know we have a proposal that'll come in for our next meeting. And then also to ask if your position on council and along with Gravity's position on council would be a good leadership position to host a Zoom meeting with youth talking about racism and issues. If you had a good facilitator that we could provide you to work with, would you be interested in working with our staff and trying to do that? And rather than have an old guy like myself or Councillor Kroll in that leadership role, it becomes a leadership role that you and Gravity would take on and host a phone-in type of Zoom meeting for youth.
Yeah, I'm sure Gravity and I would definitely love to help facilitate an event like that and get our peers involved with it. It's certainly a hot topic right now, and I'm sure there would be a very good turnout if something like that was to happen. But as for the actual event, I think obviously, like, yes, we would help facilitate it, but if it was an actual event, I think Gravity and I would be participants. And hopefully we can find some people that would actually be able to, at the event, actually lead it and run workshops and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about that. Let's investigate that opportunity further. And I know that you're still tied up in your school year end, and things are still happening for you. But there's things we can do to facilitate that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the other thing was the youth council. Yes, so Gravity and I finally wrapped up our proposal and we sent it off. I believe in the end we sent it to the Squamish Nation, Seychelles Nation, Town of Seychelles, Town of Gibsons, the SCRD, the City of Powell River, the Cathet Regional District, and the Slammon
Yeah.
Nation.
And the First Nation.
Yes, and so ideally, if everyone accepted the idea of a youth council, then every governing body, or if it's something like the SCRD, every like region in there would get a chance to choose a delegate from their area, and by delegate that would be a young person between 14 and 18 was kind of the age range we were aiming for, and they would be able to discuss issues that pertain to the Sunshine Coast. Affordable housing is a really big one right now, as well as like sustainability in our community, issues like that that really impact youth as they move into adulthood. And they would be able to discuss that amongst each other, but also they would have the opportunity to discuss with the governing bodies that they represent. And I think it would be an awesome opportunity for young people to develop their leadership skills, to develop their understanding of how municipal government works, things like that. So
Good. Thank you. And Council, that'll be on our agenda next meeting for approval. Councilor Kroll.
One just very quick last issue. The CAO and I had a meeting at the Legion last week on another issue, but one of the things that came up is the Legion is in desperate straits. They've been closed for quite a long period. You know, a lot of their membership, because of their age, are very concerned about you know, mixing socially. So they currently have a membership drive on, and I would certainly, you don't have to be a veteran to be a member of the Legion. They do some amazing work. I'm sure Gravity and Ailish will tell us, you know, at the high school graduation, the Legion are always there with all sorts of scholarships and donations. So I just encourage people, you know, give it a thought. It's the only dance floor in town. So it's worth considering. They do some great work, and you know, there's an opportunity, even, you know, if you only go 4 or 5 times a year, it's worth it. They have great Friday night meals, and well worth support.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for your contributions to the council reports tonight. We'll move on to correspondence. And in the package, we have a correspondence from Paul Carmen, Sunshine Coast Tourism, regarding request for support for 2 initiatives, online accommodation and letter of support for municipal regional tax application from all local governments. Page 113, 119 of your agenda. Council has had an opportunity to look at those. Is there any discussion? So there is a recommendation. Well, first of all, a motion to receive. Councilor Kroll, Councilor Diandrad, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. And recommendation is that the letter from Paul Carmen, Executive Director, requesting be received. Okay. So we have received it. Any discussion of that, Council? Any thoughts? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to council correspondence, which is the file for the week of May 19 and May 25. First of all, motion to receive. And does council wish to highlight any of the items on that file? Councilor Kroll.
There are a few items, Mayor Beamish. One of the things that's come up, and it is a lot of the businesses are currently struggling, particularly the licensed premise, where they have an outside patio area. And it came up at Regional District as well, and it apparently also the District of Seashelt, where a business has a license and it's a footprint that is governed under the license. The liquor licensing branch is allowing, provided that the businesses comply with the other regulations associated with their license, they're waiving the footprint and they're allowing businesses to expand, which will permit social distancing, but allow them to, excuse me, increase their capacity under the new guidelines. You know, obviously, if you have a premise and you've got to have staff and kitchen staff and so on and so forth, you have a fixed overhead. And if your potential revenue source is cut by 2/3 to comply with the COVID regulations, you're sort of hamstrung because the businesses are not going to survive. So I would like to, to acknowledge the what's been done in other communities and make a motion that the town of Gibsons work with businesses to allow them to, oops, the CAO would like my undivided
I
attention.
think he's going to tell you that that is happening, but I'll let the CAO speak.
Okay.
Sorry, Council, didn't want to interrupt your conversation. I was just trying to line up a speaking turn. Thanks for bringing that up. That certainly we've been busy with some interest from our local business owners. And on the 16th of June, we're expecting a report for yourself to consider a blanket authorization for staff to work with these businesses that are interested in this. It's in essence sort of an expedited process to bring their current license numbers outside where it's possible. And without sort of getting into specifics of local business at the moment, it's fair to say that there's some interest, and we're working on that already. Because we already have a process for sidewalk use and so on, we're not expecting any major disruptions to what we would typically see out and about. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Pearl.
So that's great. The other one I had, and I'm assuming Mayor Beamish is all over it, it's a time-sensitive issue with respect to the virtual high school graduation ceremony.
I'm scheduled to be there on Saturday to record my words for posterity. Yeah.
Did you want to borrow my last year's speech?
No, it's okay. Thanks. Yeah, Councilor Ludwig.
Thanks. Sorry, I just want to flag, I actually did have a comment about the Sunshine Coast tourism package. It just,
Okay. Thank you.
yeah, so I can come back, please.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So I apologize. I just didn't get to my mute button quickly enough last time. I just have a couple questions about this report that we received. First of all, we have liaisons from the town on the Sunshine Coast Tourism Board, like we do on our seniors board and our library board and all the other boards we sit on. Does anyone know?
I don't believe we do. No.
Okay. I guess maybe, I don't know if it's a question for the CAO or not, whether or not that would be an appropriate thing to have, whether or not discussions around that have happened in the past, but we do contribute to them. And I found the report very interesting. They sent out a survey to a select group of large accommodation members of their board. 15 large accommodation properties polled represented 37% of the total units of accommodations on the coast. 10 properties supported a 2% increase. 5 properties supported a 3% increase. And so I find this dialogue kind of interesting. They're polling the individuals that would be taxed, and they're making the decision on how they're taxed. And then those funds are going towards workforce housing, and they're deciding how that's being spent. And you see what I'm saying? Like, I'm just wondering if we can have some say in this dialogue rather than just getting a report about it.
Well, the CAO will speak to that. I think I know the answer.
So through you, Mr. Mayor. So a couple of issues. One in here is about the authorization of going from 2% to 3%. And in order to do that change, it's called the municipal regional district tax. In essence, that political authorization and check-in happens at the regional district. So it's important for us to carry forward that message for input there. The other portion in terms of the membership itself, there's nothing. I've attended the AGMs where I could in the past years, particularly in the earlier years of attempting to get a hotel tax. For a while, we were the only region without one. It was really hard to raise money then to do anything. And so that process is going through the regional district portion. My understanding is that for this additional program that they're talking about for housing, that part of it would be to set up input from local governments on that, how best to spend that money. It's not the same board of Sunshine Coast Tourism that would be, and that is my understanding, by the way, that would be in essence authorizing money expenditures on the second program. That's a separate portion, as I understand, but we can get some clarification for that, of course.
Perhaps Councillor Kroll, if you have see what discussion the regional district is, but my understanding that the tax can only be used for affordable housing initiatives, and that the industry has to support the taxation being done with them. And that's why they get that vote on it. But we can get more and see what's happening in the regional district. Councillor Ladwig.
And again, I apologize if I'm not understanding this, because it is actually a bit of a complicated report I found.
Yeah.
But so with regard to the online accommodation platform funds, there's 133,000 and 53 went to destination development for marketing and whatnot. And then, 40,000 went to workforce housing. Like, those decisions are being made at the board level, if I'm not mistaken. And not that I dispute with how they're spending their money. It just seems to me like I'm just wondering whether or not we could have more engagement in this, and whether or not that's even an opportunity. So I'm just flagging. I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay. All right, thank you. Yeah, and we'll keep an eye on it.
Okay, I think we're good now. I was just flagging to your attention the correspondence item 9.1 from the Sunshine Coast Tourism Group. They were actually seeking 2 letters of support, one for their online accommodation platform guidelines, and the other a letter of support for municipal regional district tax renewal application. And I was just wondering if council had any interest in those requests.
Okay. Thank you for flagging that. Okay. Council, will you support those applications going forward?
Yeah.
I see nodding, so can I have a motion? Councillor Kroll, you'll move and support, and Councillor D'Andrade second it. Any further discussion?
Just that I would like further discussion going forward.
All right, and yeah, okay, well, we should follow up on that, and maybe we can invite Paul to come to another council meeting shortly and have a conference or join us on Zoom.
Yeah, perhaps talk about board structure and our engagement. That's all.
Good, yeah. Okay. All in favor? Thank you. It's approved. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Corporate Officer. Okay, other Councillor D'Andrade. You're muted. Sometimes a good thing.
I know, I forget it. A correspondence in a May 19 package about the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy submission letter. Did you have an opportunity? And because they're inviting like municipalities to be part of that.
No, I didn't. I'm sorry. And yeah, I apologize that I don't have that package in front of me either. I've got the May 25th, but I don't have the earlier one with me. So.
Okay, so, well, okay, maybe if you have the opportunity to read, and then we can make a decision next meeting.
Yeah,
okay.
Sure. Okay, thank you. I'll follow up on that. Yeah.
And Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
There's another letter actually from Harriet Hunter on May 25th, and this is about the George. There's another letter that we received as well in our package, and I myself sent an email with regards to, they talk about they haven't seen, it's the issue that I raised about, the hotel, sorry, if the residents are built first, and then there has been this email and others that nobody can understand, can see the development agreement with any of these conditions. So my question is, since community engagement is our priority, when it's directed to mayor and council, when are we answering this question? Because I think I myself want to understand better, and I think members of the community want to understand too.
Yeah, staff are working on those responses now, but I will say to people that when you who are writing in letters, if you send them online through our website to mayor and council, they go then to our staff who then deal with them. Unfortunately, when they come across in this way, they come to mayor and council directly, and so it's incumbent upon us to kind of redirect them, and we do that, and that's how they end up on these packages. But in all cases, sometimes they may be missed. I may miss an email and not redirect it. So if it goes directly on the website to mayor and council, it goes through our clerk, and our clerk acknowledges it and provides it to the appropriate staff member. I do know that the responses to these are being worked on by staff, and just give staff time, because it's not a matter of what comes in next. It's that there's nobody waiting around for next email saying, "Oh, goody, I got something to do." It is that they have lots to do, and they are catching these things as they come. I know they're working on drafts, and you follow up with the CAO on that, but I know they are working on these things.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on that? The Government Awareness Week has passed us, but I think we're all aware of government. So we're good. Going on then to the next one is Chair Pratt of the Regional District, a letter dated May 26, in terms of reference to the Water Advisory Committee, and they request that council appoint a person to be a monitor of that committee. So first of all, motion to receive the letter. Councillor Kroll, Councillor D'Andrade, all in favor of receipt? Thank you. Is there anybody who wishes to be a monitor for that committee and be one of the 3 non-voting members? Are you already part of that committee, Councillor Kroll, as a director, or? You're on mute, Councillor Kroll.
I thought our CAO was on that committee.
No, they're asking for an elected person in this case.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you're there as a board member or if you want to be there as a board member. If not, I'll be prepared to do it.
Okay. Well, I don't mind doing it. I guess it probably will be full board, so
Yeah,
we should have our 2 votes.
but it's a non-voting. They're asking for a non-voting position.
Only kidding.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, yeah. So I mean, I'm certainly prepared to participate at that level and keep up to date with what's happening there, because there's going to be a next one in just a minute. We're going to get another chance to be appointed to something else.
And
So
just
please,
with
if we can respond that Mayor Beamish would be prepared to sit on that committee, unless anybody else wants to. Okay, all right, I'll do that. Councilor Kroll?
just with reference to water, the regional district is putting out their AAP for the Church Road well site, so that's moving forward.
Okay, the next letter we have is the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, and a letter again from Chair Pratt for receipt. Somebody move receipt of that letter. Councillor Kroll, Councillor DeAndrade, all in favor of receipt? Thank you. And further, they're asking that a council member participate in the evaluation proposals for the Community Wildlife Protection Plan. Councillor DeAndrade, would you be prepared to take that on? You're muted. Yeah. There you are.
Oh, I'm actually want to focus on the Environment Committee.
Okay, okay. This is just to participate in the evaluation proposals. That's all it is. It's not an ongoing committee.
Ongoing?
Not
Okay,
ongoing, no.
okay, then I would participate. Yeah.
All right, thank you. So we'll respond that if council is happy with the volunteer of Councilor DeAndrade on that, because I know that's some area that you are concerned about is evaluation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Do we, okay, that we'll just say that yes, and Councilor Corporate Officer Grist.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering if council would like to pass a motion for the previous appointment to the Water Supply Advisory Committee, and then also for the Community Wildfire Protection Plan.
We can do that. Councilor Kroll?
Just as
Yeah. Move the Councilor Beamish, Mayor Beamish be on the Water Supply Advisory Committee, and that Councilor DeAndrade be on the committee to evaluate proposals for the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. Moved by Councilor Kroll, seconded by Councilor Ladwig. Two people who got out of all the work. All in favor? Thank you. Okay. Okay, thank you for that. New business, District Council Squamish, the 2019 Climate Emergency Resolution. I wanted council to see that. It's a fairly exhaustive resolution, but it came up last meeting in the context of the Squamish also response with regards to the wood fiber LNG plant. And it's an area that concerns me, and I'm not aware that we've actually been given a referral on this matter by the LNG, but one thing we did do, council will recall, is we did in 2019 support the application for the Howe Sound to be declared a UNESCO biosphere. And I believe that we have to have some consistency in our resolutions. And that if we're going to support a biosphere, I'm also leaning towards supporting the resolution that Squamish passed relative to wood fiber LNG, and that was to support it subject to the wood fiber LNG plant meeting the UN climate change emission targets. And I don't know if this is the time, if we have time to discuss this. That's certainly the way I am leaning that, because I think it's consistent with what we're saying. Now, we don't have a climate action plan, and we don't have we haven't adopted a climate emergency resolution, but we do have climate change factoring very strongly in our strategic plan. And I think that we have to be true to our own positions on these things. And I, for one, would be in favor of the supporting the District Squamish resolution that they passed. I don't know that we have to pass a new resolution, but I believe that the Howe Sound is a very important economic and climate environmental area to our community. We are at the mouth of the Howe Sound. It's also an important area to the Squamish Nation. It's not saying don't proceed with a project. It's saying proceed with a project under conditions. And the conditions, I think, are important ones in this day and age. So put that out for discussion with council. Councilor Kroll.
I'd certainly like to move to support the resolution. I think it's what you've outlined, I think is, we need to be consistent if we're we're all in the same sandbox, sort of, as it were, and we need to work together. We have consistent guidelines and policies. So I'm totally in support of a motion to support the motion as proposed by Squamish.
I have a copy of that motion in front of me here. It says, therefore be resolved that the Council of the District of Squamish does not support an extension of the environmental certificate for the wood fiber LNG unless the extension includes a condition that the wood fiber LNG must meet the IPC targets for its operation within the District of Squamish to reduce the GHG emissions by 45% by 2030 and 100% by 2050. That is their resolution. Councillor Ladwig, I'll go to Councillor Ladwig next.
I apologize if you said this already and I just missed it as I was reading materials. So this resolution is this part of their environmental assessment?
Yeah, it's part of the application. They applied to extend their plan, and so this is the council. This is a response to that application. Councillor Kroll.
In light of the time, sir, I'd like to make a motion to extend, because if we're going to discuss this and we have some other things and inquiries, I would like to propose that we extend to at least 9:30.
9:30, okay. Seconder? Seconded by Councillor D'Andrade. All in favor of extension to 9:30? Okay, thank you. Okay, that's approved. So thank you for that. Councillor D'Andrade, do you wish to discuss?
It's just because I see the climate emergency resolution from Squamish, but I'm not following. So I wonder if we have different documents.
No, I have that resolution as a separate document.
Okay.
I printed off today.
Okay.
There's okay, there it is.
So I'm keeping this because I think, we know, like, as you said, we have been made commitments, but I think we need to get into the planning. And I think Squamish has been doing a tremendous job with that. And they have, specific policies. So anyways, I'll support that and I'll keep it. And if you can, I don't know where I can find this document, but it would be great if you could send to council.
Yeah, I think a resolution to the effect that we would write to the, I guess it's the Environmental Assessment Board, that in terms of the extension of LNG, saying that we support the position of the District of Squamish, and that we would copy them on that letter.
Okay.
And Councillor Kroll?
Oh, second.
Okay. You move that, Councillor Kroll. Councillor D'Andrade, second that. Okay, thank you. I just think it's important that we're going to take positions. We don't have, frankly, the same capacity that Sechelt or Squamish or Vancouver or other larger communities have to fulfill the research mandate, but we do understand the issues. And I think that if we have confidence in our associates in Squamish, which I do, I'm confident that I could support their position on this issue, which is in their neighborhood. So further discussion, all in favor? Thank you. So we're supporting the Squamish position as I read it out there. Do you want me to read it one more time? Okay. All right. Thank you. I'll let the corporate officer, I'll provide a copy of that to the corporate officer. And if you want to look at it, there's reference in the Squamish Chief newspaper, dated May 19th. And it says, District of Squamish asked province to impose climate emergency conditions on wood fiber. Okay, thank you for that. And we'll go now to notice of motion. There are none. Inquiries. Corporate officer, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, I'll ask anybody who's in the meeting as an attendee to please use the raise the hand feature at the bottom of the screen, and I'll turn on your video and audio. And I see one, Mr. Mayor, just one moment.
Yep. Suzanne Singer, your name's there.
It's me again.
Thank you.
Hi, folks. So I have a couple questions, and I also really just wanted to say thank you for that last resolution. Again, it's really fun to join in these meetings and be able to say thanks. I've been involved in the Biosphere Initiative since the inception of the concept. So I love it that you're embracing that concept and then using it to, you know, sort of work together in solidarity around how sound. So I think that's exactly what the intent of this initiative is. And so it's really great to see that. I don't know if it's appropriate right now, but I also just wanted to acknowledge Youth Councillor Mackenzie's comments and to say thank you. This is a really important conversation. It's wonderful to hear that from the youth, and also to invite, because I'm not sure if you're aware of the Biosphere Initiative, and that Mayor Beamish attends the How Sound Community Forum, and Councillor DeAndrade as well has done so. And this might also be a forum to present the idea of the Youth Council.
Yes.
So that you might want to connect up with that group. It just seems like it would be a good fit.
If I could say that that connection is already made with both Ailish and Gravity through the Fraser Basin Council.
Oh, excellent.
That's right. Yeah, who also attends. So yeah.
Okay. So that's
that's it. You've had your two.
No, I do finally have questions this time.
Okay.
The first, well, I have a request, and it is my request would be, will you please consider inviting the GABC Society leadership to attend that leaders meeting at the end of June? I don't think we were included initially. Not asking for an answer right now. I'm asking you to please consider doing that.
Yep.
And then, so there are 3 items of correspondence. I just wanted to go through them really quickly if possible. There's one, so 2020-05-14. So May 14th, it looks like the Crown land application for the foreshore, the George, Klaus Furness's Crown land application. The town received correspondence about revisions to that application. Will that correspondence be made public?
CAO, is there something fresh, or corporate officer?
All communication sent to mayor and council is a public document. I just have to vet it first for personal information before the rest of the letter can be released.
Okay, that's great. So that actually answers the other 2 items of correspondence. So if would I just email the corporate officer and ask for those correspondence, and you can vet it and we're good? Okay, that's perfect. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Thank you for your comments. And as I say, it is good to receive supportive comments as well as appropriate criticisms. Thank you. Okay, more further, Councillor Kroll.
Just for Ms. Singer's benefit, with respect to the Youth Council, the Squamish Nation also being involved in the biosphere, their youth representative, should they tend to join the Youth Council, would also have a liaison with the biosphere.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, are there any further questions coming, corporate officer?
Hi, Mr. Mayor, we do have one more.
Thank you. Yes. Sophie Woodward, Coast Reporter.
Hi there. Just one quick question. I believe it's probably for staff. With regards to the temporary use permit for the recreational vehicle site at North Road, since it's been denied, what does that mean for the residents living there now?
Go to the CAO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We part of the reason that we've been working with Mr. Lenroth was to try and arrive at a situation that resolved an ongoing situation with bylaw enforcement and other matters that have come up on that site. Try to improve that. Since that has not occurred, we will resume our bylaw enforcement as we were, and we have to get some more details on that site, and we'll continue to work with Mr. Dan Roth to try to find a positive solution for the site.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing nothing else. No further questions, Corporate Officer?
Not at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, then we'll have a motion to close, and you have a motion to close the meeting in accordance with sections 91 E, I, and J of the Community Charter. 91 E being the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land. Receipt of advice, I being the advice of social plan. Change information from disclosure under FOI, and that's it. So motion to close. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Ladwig, thank you. And thank you very much, Councillor McKenzie. I guess the question I have is when do you finish school and when do you have your last meeting with us? We haven't talked about those things.
I am actually not sure when school ends because I'm not sure if exam week is still happening or not. So I don't have an answer for you there. And then as for my last meeting, I thought that was just up to whatever like guideline was in.
We'll work that through. We'll talk with the corporate officer to see how that works. And we generally take August off anyway, so that it may be appropriate to tie something in for there. So we'll see.
Sounds good.
Okay, corporate officer.
Mr. Mayor, I believe you still require a vote for the motion to close.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do we? Yeah, all in favor. We had a mover and seconder. All in favor. Thank you very much. We are closed officially now then. So thank you, Ailish, and we'll talk about that youth opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for participating.